On November 18, 1978, in a jungle clearing in Guyana, 909 people died. Most of them drank poison, willingly. They lined up, took a cup, swallowed, and lay down beside their children, their parents, their friends. Some held hands as they died. Some sang hymns. Some simply waited in silence for the end to arrive. For nearly 50 years, the world has asked the same question. How? How do you convince 909 people, including 304 children, to end their own lives in a single afternoon? The easy answer is madness, mass hysteria, a group of broken people following a lunatic into the jungle. The comfortable answer is that they were different from us, weaker, more gullible, desperate in ways we could never be. But here's the truth that should unsettle you. They were not different from you. They were nurses, teachers, social workers, college students, mothers who wanted better lives for their children, idealists who believed they could build a better world. They were intelligent, capable, often educated people who walked into Jonestown with their eyes open and their hearts full of hope. And Jim Jones killed them. Not with a gun, not with a blade, but with a system, a carefully engineered psychological machine designed to manufacture obedience, to dissolve identity, to make death feel like the only logical choice. This is not a story about a madman. This is a story about a machine. And the machine worked because it was built on principles that still operate today, in organizations, in movements, in relationships where control masquerades as love. Welcome to Evil Minds Dwell Here. If you want to understand how evil is engineered, not just performed, consider subscribing. Because what happened in Jonestown was not an accident of history. It was a blueprint. Every system of control begins with the same question. How do you get people to walk through the door? Jim Jones understood something most predators never grasp. You don't recruit victims. You recruit believers. You don't prey on weakness. You weaponize strength. In the 1950s and the 1960s, America was tearing itself apart over civil rights. Churches preached equality on Sunday and practiced segregation on Monday. Into this hypocrisy stepped a white preacher in Indiana who did something almost no one else was doing. He integrated his congregation completely. Black families and white families worshiping together, eating together. At a time when this could get you killed, Jones made it the centerpiece of his ministry. This attracted exactly the people Jones wanted: idealists, true believers, people willing to sacrifice for their principles. These weren't broken people. They were some of the best people, and that's precisely what made them vulnerable. The trap does not close all at once. It closes in increments so small, you do not notice the walls moving. First, you join a church doing good work, food programs, drug rehabilitation, free clinics. The temple was not asking for your soul. It was asking for your Saturday mornings helping serve breakfast to homeless veterans. Then you attend more services. You feel like part of a family. The outside world starts to feel distant, hostile. But here, things make sense. Then comes the ask. Can you help with a project? Donate more? Move closer to the church? You sold your car, but the church provides transportation. You gave your savings, but the community takes care of your needs. You signed over your property, but you were building something bigger than individual ownership. Each step seems reasonable, and by the time you realize how far you have traveled, going back feels impossible. Your friends are here, your money is here, everything is here. This is how cults operate, not through sudden conversion, but through gradual commitment. Each sacrifice makes the previous sacrifices feel more meaningful. Leaving means admitting all those sacrifices were for nothing. Most people would rather die than accept that truth. Once you have believers, the next step is separation. Jones moved his congregation from Indianapolis to California, then to Guyana. Each move severed connections to the outside world. In 1974, Jones sent an advance team to lease nearly 4,000 acres of jungle from the Guyanese government. The location was not an accident. It was outside American jurisdiction, hours from the nearest city, surrounded by dense vegetation, and for all practical purposes, the end of the world. There were no telephones, no television, and no newspapers except the ones Jones approved. Letters were monitored. The only information that reached Jonestown was the information Jones wanted them to hear. And what he wanted them to hear was terrifying. Night after night, Jones gathered his followers for white nights, emergency drills that lasted until dawn. He told them the CIA was planning to attack, that mercenaries were coming to slaughter them. He read news reports, many fabricated, describing plans to raid the compound. Outside, he told them, was death. Inside was family. This is the psychology of siege. When you convince people they are under constant threat, you do not have to chain them to the compound. Fear becomes the chain and the jungle becomes the wall. Passports were confiscated, armed guards patrolled the perimeter, and those who tried to escape faced miles of hostile terrain with no supplies. And here is the critical mechanism. Jones controlled verification. When someone asked whether the CIA was really coming, there was no way to check. There was no phone to call, and no friend outside who could say, everything is fine, come home. The only source of truth was Jim Jones. When you control information, you control reality itself. Isolation creates dependency, but dependency is not enough. To achieve total control, the individual must be dissolved entirely. Jones did this through a systematic assault on everything that makes a person, their body, their relationships, their secrets, their sense of what is real. Sleep deprivation was constant and deliberate. Followers worked 16, 18, 20 hours a day, clearing jungle, building structures, farming crops, attending meetings that stretched past midnight. The work was framed as revolutionary sacrifice. In reality, it was a weapon. A tired mind does not question. A tired mind follows instructions. A tired mind accepts whatever reality is what offered because it lacks the energy to construct alternatives. Sleep deprivation has been used by interrogators throughout history for precisely this reason. It does not leave marks, but it breaks down resistance more effectively than physical pain. After weeks of 4-hour nights, critical thinking becomes impossible. Followers could not remember what it felt like to have independent thoughts. Public confession became mandatory. In meetings that stretched for hours, followers were required to stand before the community and confess their sins, their doubts, their private thoughts about Jones. They confessed sexual fantasies. They confessed resentments toward other members. They confessed, sometimes under pressure, to crimes they had not actually committed. These confessions were not therapeutic. They were weapons. Every secret became leverage. Jones kept detailed files on everyone. There was a term for these sessions, catharsis, but there was nothing healing about them. Members would be called to the front of the pavilion and confronted with accusations, sometimes based on informant reports, sometimes fabricated. They would be humiliated, berated, sometimes physically beaten by other members eager to demonstrate loyalty. Imagine knowing that if you ever tried to leave, your darkest confessions could be broadcast to everyone you have ever loved. Imagine knowing Jones has signed letters, some fabricated under pressure, describing crimes you never committed. It does not matter if they are true, they exist, they are signed, they can be used. This is the psychology of compromise. Once you have given someone ammunition against you, leaving becomes terrifying. The cost is not just losing your community, it is facing the weaponized version of yourself that your captor has constructed. So you stay, because staying means the files stay closed. Family relationships were systematically disrupted. Spouses were separated, assigned to different work crews, sometimes encouraged to take new partners. Children were raised communally, taught that Jones was their true father, and that biological family was a bourgeois concept holding back revolutionary progress. Sexual relationships were controlled with particular precision. Jones claimed the right to sleep with any member he chose. He assigned partnerships. He broke them apart. The bonds that might give someone strength to resist, family, marriage, parenthood, were deliberately weakened until they could not bear weight. A network of informants meant private conversations were never truly private. Children reported their parents. Spouses exposed each other's doubts. When you cannot trust anyone, you cannot organize resistance. You are surrounded by 1,000 people and utterly alone. There is no private self anymore. There is only the community. There is only Father. If this analysis is valuable to you, liking the video helps this channel reach people who want to understand how control operates. not through force, but through the systematic dismantling of everything that makes us individuals. Here is where genius becomes horror. Jim Jones did not ask his followers to die on November 18, 1978. He had been asking them for years. The White Night drills were not just emergency preparations, they were rehearsals, systematic, repeated rehearsals of the final act. Jones would wake the compound at midnight, screaming that the attack had begun. Followers would be gathered in the pavilion. Then Jones would bring out vats of liquid and tell them it was poison. They were told to drink to demonstrate their loyalty, their willingness to die for the cause rather than be captured. They drank. They waited. Some cried. Some held each other. Some sat in terrified silence. Nothing happened. Jones would say it was a test, a loyalty test. Father just needed to know you were willing. This happened dozens of times over the years, intensifying as Jonestown became more isolated. The first time, people were terrified, convinced they were about to die. By the 20th time, drinking from the vat had become routine. Unpleasant, yes. Strange, certainly, but routine. This is the psychology of desensitization. It is the same principle that allows soldiers to kill in combat. Repeated exposure to the unthinkable makes the unthinkable normal. The brain adapts, the panic response dulls, and what once triggered overwhelming fear becomes merely uncomfortable. But there is something darker. Each time followers drank and survived, Jones collected data. He watched who hesitated. He noted who needed to be forced. He identified the true believers, the ones who drank first, eagerly, without question, and the wavering, the skeptical, and the potentially dangerous. These observations were documented. By November 1978, Jones knew exactly who would comply and who would need to be controlled. The rehearsals were not just psychological preparation, they were reconnaissance. And there is one more element that makes these drills particularly sinister: the affirmation afterward. After each White Night, after the terror subsided and the poison turned out to be fruit punch, Jones would praise his followers. He would tell them how proud he was, how strong they were, how their willingness to die proved they were the most committed revolutionaries on earth. This is intermittent reinforcement, the most powerful form of psychological conditioning. The terror creates vulnerability. The praise creates bonding. The cycle creates addiction. It is the same mechanism that keeps people in abusive relationships. Unpredictable pain followed by validation makes the pain feel meaningful. By the time the real poison was mixed, many followers had been so conditioned that drinking it felt like validation, like the final proof of everything they had believed, like the ultimate expression of belonging. On November 18, 1978, Congressman Leo Ryan visited Jonestown. Families in America had been desperate for months. Their relatives had stopped writing. Phone calls were impossible. Rumors of abuse, imprisonment, and madness in the jungle had reached Washington. Ryan, a congressman from California with a reputation for investigating abuses of power, decided to see for himself. He arrived with a delegation that included journalists, concerned relatives, and staff members. Jones greeted them warmly. A reception was staged, music, food, testimonials from happy residents. For a few hours, Jonestown looked exactly like the paradise Jones claimed it was. But cracks appeared. A note was secretly passed to one of the journalists. It said, "Help us get out of Jonestown." Then another family came forward, then another. By the time Ryan announced he would take anyone who wanted to leave, 16 people had said yes. This was the moment Jones had always feared. The moment when the walls of his reality failed to contain everyone inside. The moment when defection became visible, when others might realize that leaving was possible. Jones made a decision that would ensure no one else would have the chance to leave. He sent gunmen to the Port Kaituma airstrip. As Ryan's group was boarding the planes, a tractor trailer pulled up and armed men opened fire. Congressman Ryan was shot more than 20 times. 3 journalists, NBC cameraman Bob Brown, NBC reporter Don Harris, and San Francisco Examiner photographer Greg Robinson were killed. So was defector Patricia Parks. Several others were wounded. The planes never took off. Back in Jonestown, Jones gathered his followers in the pavilion and told them what had happened. The congressman was dead. American forces would come now. There would be no mercy. There would be torture, imprisonment, the separation of families. the destruction of everything they had built. He called it revolutionary suicide. Not defeat, but victory. Not murder, but an act of defiance that the world would never forget. The vats were brought out. This time they contained cyanide mixed with grape-flavored flavor aid. Some people drank willingly. Years of conditioning had done their work. The barrier between life and death had been eroded to nothing through dozens of rehearsals. They took the cups and walked to the edge of the pavilion and lay down. Some resisted. There are accounts from the few survivors of people being held down, of syringes being used on those who refused to drink, of armed guards ensuring no one escaped. The jungle surrounded the guards. There was nowhere to run. The few who managed to flee into the darkness would later emerge to tell the story. Parents gave the poison to their children first. This was deliberate. Once your child is dead, what reason is there to live? What strength remains to resist? The sequence was designed to eliminate resistance at its source. Jones had always recorded everything. This final gathering was no different. 44 minutes of audio captured the end of Jonestown. On the tape, you can hear Jones speaking, alternating between comfort and command. You can hear crying. You can hear a woman named Christine Miller arguing, pleading for another way, asking if they could flee to Russia instead. You can hear Jones dismissing her. You can hear children. The tape exists. It is publicly available. It is not the sound of madness. It is the sound of a machine running exactly as designed. By nightfall, 909 bodies lay in the Guyanese sun, the largest loss of American civilian life in a deliberate act until September 11, 2001. Jonestown was not an aberration. The techniques Jones used, isolation, information control, identity dissolution, incremental commitment, rehearsal of unthinkable acts, did not die with him. They are documented. They are studied. They are in various forms still in use. Every high control group operates from the same playbook. Separate followers from outside connections. Make the group the only source of truth. Break down individual identity. Raise the cost of leaving until departure feels impossible. Rehearse extreme commitment until it becomes routine. The difference between Jonestown and countless other organizations is not the presence of these techniques. It is the degree to which they are applied. The spectrum runs from intense but legal religious groups to abusive relationships to cults that end in tragedy. The mechanisms are the same, only the endpoint differs. And this is the lesson that should haunt you. You are not immune. The people who died in Jonestown were not weaker than you. They were not stupider than you. They were teachers and nurses and idealists who wanted to change the world. They walked into People's Temple with the same confidence you might feel walking into any organization that promises purpose and community and a chance to matter. The machine that killed them was built one small step at a time. Each step was reasonable. Each commitment was voluntary. And by the time the walls were visible, the door had disappeared. If you want to understand how evil operates, you have to understand this. It rarely announces itself. It rarely looks like evil. It looks like belonging. It looks like purpose. It looks like finally finding the family you always wanted. That's what makes it dangerous. Thank you for watching Evil Minds Dwell Here. If you want to understand how cruelty is engineered, how systems dissolve resistance and manufacture compliance, subscribe to this channel. Understanding the machine is the first step to recognizing it, and recognizing it is the only defense.